Hi everyone, I'm Aryen, and today I'm going to take you through a project that I've made, which I call YouTube Summariser. What YouTube Summariser is a Chrome extension, and you can go to any YouTube video and it summarizes the YouTube video for you in very few lines, so you don't have to, sit and watch through the whole video. Let me start by giving you a small demo. Here I have a video open, a speech by Steve Jobs, which he gave in 2005 at Stanford. Now, let's say I don't really want to watch this whole speech. All I can do is go to my extensions, click on YouTube Summariser, then click on Summarize, and here it is summarizing. So we're back, and as you can see, this has finished summarizing. Um, This may seem like a lot, but trust me, compared to the whole transcript of the video, this is barely 10%. And obviously, you can tweak this to your liking. This extension, the design may not look the best. You may want to tweak the colors, the styling. That's all up to you. Uh, the idea of this video is just to show you what this is capable of and what you can create in Python using just a few lines of code. The way this project is structured is there is an API, a summarizer API that I've created in Python. And this Chrome extension is created using HTML and JavaScript. And whenever we run the summarize button, it calls the summarizer API, which is in Python. And then the API returns the summarized text, which this Chrome extension displays. So this is everything that you'll be needing for this project. First of all, we'll need Flask, which is used to create the API. Flask is a very popular Python library for creating APIs, websites, web apps, whatever. Then for the actual summarizer itself, the summarizer model, we'll be using this library called Hugging Face Transformers. And Hugging Face provides a lot of pre-trained models and libraries for various use cases, and we are going to use the summarization model that is provided to us by Hugging Face Transformers. Lastly, we're going to use the YouTube transcript API. This just helps us extract the transcript from a YouTube video. And let's move on to the code, shall we? This Let me start by giving you the structure of the whole project. First of all, we have app.py. App.py is the API that summarizes the whatever text you give to it. Then we have an extension folder, and in the extension folder, you will find everything that is needed for the Chrome extension itself. So here we have the icon. You can see it's just a simple icon, not really important. You can put whatever you want. Manifest.json is something that is required by Chrome. So we need the extension title, the description, permissions, etc., etc. You can see because Chrome, for security reasons, Chrome requires you to declare what your extension is about. And popup.html and popup.js. We'll get to that. I'll get to that a bit later, but this is basically what these two are the extension itself, whereas this is the API. Let's start with the API. So app.py, first of all, we are obviously importing everything. We're importing Flask, we're importing YouTube transcript API, and we're importing pipeline from transformers. Now, pipeline is a method of the transformers module that helps us implement whatever models they have, summarization in our case. The first thing we do is app equal to Flask name. This is just to set up the Flask app. You can find this on the Flask documentation. This is something that's required in all Flask apps. If you don't know, I suggest you look this up, but basically whenever you call a URL, an API is nothing but a URL, like a website URL. And whenever you call a URL, there are different kinds of requests. There are GET requests, POST requests, push requests, put requests, sorry. So a GET request gets information. POST request is to post something on a database or on the app or whatever, post new information there. And a put request is to update existing information. In our case, we want to get request because we want to get a summary. We are not editing anything on the website itself. So the first function I'm defining is a summary API. So URL equal to request. Request is something we've imported from Flask, and request is nothing but the URL. It helps us perform functions using the URL. So the request that we send to Flask. If you don't know a URL structure, let me just quickly show it to you. So basically, there is so www.google.com, for example, slash let's say books question mark title equal to Python. So this is an example of a URL, and this is what is sent into the request. So now with the URL, you can see there's difference. So this is the base URL or the domain. This is the path that we want to follow. So in our case, slash summary. So this is what we want to. This is the specific request that we're doing. That is books is the request. In our case, summary is the request. And this is the argument we are passing. So in our case, which book do we want? We want the Python book. So title equal to Python. In our case, we'll be passing an argument called URL, and that URL will have the URL of the YouTube video. So basically URL equal to request.args. Args is arguments. So these things next to the question mark, they're called arguments. So we want to get the URL argument from this whole request. Now that that's out of the way, we want to extract the video ID from the URL. So the transcript API uses the video ID to return a transcript because every YouTube video's ID is unique. So we extract the video ID over here using url.split equal to, and then we get this returns a string of this returns a list of strings, and the element at index 1 is the ID that we want. Then we call the summary function, and so basically there's a get transcript function that I've defined here and a get summary function that I've defined here, and I'll get to them in just a second. So basically what this is doing is I'm passing in the video ID to the transcript function. It is returning the transcript to me. Once I have the transcript, I'm passing in this whole transcript to the get summary function, and this get summary function returns the summary to me. This summary is what I'm returning to the Chrome extension. Now, keep in mind, it's the Chrome extension which originally called the API. So I'm returning this summary back to the Chrome extension so that it can display it to the user. Along with that, this is just this is an HTTP code 200. That means the request was successful. You may have heard of error 404. Error 404 basically means the page wasn't found. So just like that, we have a status code 200. That means the request was successful. So getting into these functions, get transcript. This is a function that gets a transcript based on the video ID. This is very simple. Transcript list. So if you haven't seen a YouTube transcript, in fact, I can show you right now. So in this video only, let's see. If I show transcript here, a YouTube transcript is divided into various subparts. You see 055 is this, 101 is this. So the transcript API here, this returns a list of all those various subparts. And for the whole transcript, I want to join all of them. So I'm doing space. So I'm joining all of those various strings with a space so that I get one long string of transcripts. And then I return the transcript, obviously. This return transcript, I pass it into the get summary function, which gets me the summary. And if you so now we can move on to the actual summarizing. And for the summarizing, we aren't really implementing the whole summarizing model ourselves. We're using an existing implementation by Hugging Face, as I showed you earlier. And the way you do this is first you initialize a summariser. The summariser is nothing but pipeline, and then the type of model that we want. In this case, a summarization model. There are multiple, there's a classification model, identification, multiple things. So we want a summarization model. I'm initializing a way, and if you don't understand some of this stuff, don't worry. I shared with you the websites. Just go through them. They've got in detail descriptions of what each and every function is and what everything does. So I'm initializing a variable called summary with this small with an empty string. And now let me just to understand what is going on here. Unfortunately, the transformers summarization model has a limitation. It can only provide the summary of a piece of text that is smaller than 1000 characters. And if let's say we pass a string that is greater than 1000 characters, it will show an error. To avoid that, what we do is we break up our string into multiple parts of 1000, and then we run the summarizer separately on each of those parts of 1000 characters, and then we combine all of them to create one giant summary. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the length of the transcript. I'm doing an integer division by 1000 to get the number of parts, and then +1 because the range function does not include the stop value. So for I in range this much, I'm doing summary text. This is part of the summary, not the whole summary. I'm running summarizer, and in the summarizer, I have to pass in what transcript I want, right? So I'm passing in summarizer, transcript, and then just the substring of the transcript. I into 1000 up till I+1 into 1000. This, if you don't understand this, this is a feature in Python called string slicing. This lets me take subparts of a string. I suggest you look this up. It's very useful in multiple places. So what we can do now is simply, so this summarizer function actually, it returns a list of dictionaries. So let me just take you to the documentation here to help you understand what I'm talking about. So if we look at this, so this is what the summarizer function returns, right? It returns the summary, it returns the original text, and it returns a title. So what we want here is the summary. The way we do this is access summary, the 0th index because it's a list, and out from that we access the summary text because that is what we want. Now this forms a part of our summary text, right? Now that we have the part, we just attach it to the whole. So summary is equal to summary plus summary text plus a space. This loop, and then this loop repeats itself for how many ever parts the transcript has. And remember, we divided it into parts earlier because we want it in parts of 1000 characters, because the summarizer function only takes strings up to 1000 characters. Now that that's done, once everything is there, we have our whole summary, we just return our summary over here. That's it. And that's basically all the API is. And let's now move on to the Chrome extension, and let me show you how the Chrome extension works, right? So I already showed you the manifest.json. This is something required by Chrome for privacy purposes and security purposes. This you can search up on the Chrome developer documentation, or you can just copy what I have over here. Be sure you do this carefully or your extension may or may not work. So popup.html, this extension, I'm calling it a pop-up because when you click on it, it pops up a window. So I'm just calling it pop-up. Popup.html is the whole design. This is where I design, the text, the buttons. So I have a title, YouTube transcript summarizer, and I have, this is the style. So the button has this style, button disabled has these styles, so color, padding, border radius. You can set this all to your liking, or you can just do what I've done. This is no big deal. And this is where I've defined my layout. So let me just take you through what I've done. First of all, we have the heading, YouTube transcript summarizer. So if you look at what we have over here, we have a heading, first of all, YouTube transcript summarizer. That is what I've defined over here. Then we have a button, and this button is a summarize button. That is this button over here. And I've given it an ID of summarize. And this will come in later when we actually implement the logic of the extension. Here we have a paragraph with an ID output. So right now this is empty, but later on when we run the extension and we actually get the summary, that summary is going to come in over here in the output. And this is the script because while the HTML defines the layout of our extension, the popup.javascript file, it defines the logic of our extension. So for the extension to know what to do, we just say script equal to script source equal to popup.js. And when this popup.html is created, when the layout of the whole thing is created, it also calls popup.js, which starts our extension and puts it into action. um, these IDs are these IDs are required. So just for the logic, so this is the ID we'll be using to identify the button, to check if a user has clicked the button. This ID output is what we'll be requiring to put the summarized output into the paragraph. Let's move on to the actual logic of how I've coded this whole of how the extension works. So first of all, I am creating a button constant. So constant button equal to document. Document is nothing but this HTML document, and I'm get element by ID. This is the ID that we defined earlier over here, summarize. This is the ID. So I'm getting an element using that ID. So I'm getting this summarize button, and I'm saving it to this variable, actually constant, called button. Next, to check if a user has actually clicked the button, we do button.add event listener, and the function that we check for is a click, and then this is everything that happens when the button is clicked. First of all, we set the button.disabled equal to true. As you can see here, once I click this button, I can't click it anymore. It's now disabled and it's started summarizing. So that's what's happening here. I'm doing button.disabled equal to true, and I'm doing button.inner.html equal to summarizing. This is inner HTML is nothing but changing the text of the button from summarize to summarizing, just to give an idea, just to let the user know what is going on. So the user isn't just the user needs to have a response, right? Because otherwise you can't just leave him or her hanging. Next, we need to get the URL, because if you remember, our app requires the URL. When we send the get request, we need the URL of the YouTube video. So that we get using this Chrome feature called chrome.tabs.query. And by the way, all of these you don't remember. Even I don't remember what each and every feature is. You can just simply go through the Chrome documentation or the JavaScript documentation, and they have all of these, what each function does and everything. So chrome.tabs.query, I can query one of the tabs, and I can, so the current window true, active tab true. So I'm basically querying the active tab. The active tab is obviously the YouTube video tab, and from that tab I'm extracting the URL. You just do that simply by going to tabs 0.url, because tabs is a list of all the tabs you have open, and 0 is the current tab. So I'm getting the URL of the current tab. I'm saving it to the variable URL. XHR is just a convention for an XML HTTP request. XML HTTP request is a built-in class, that JavaScript class to make HTTP requests. So HTTP, if you don't know, is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's what the whole internet revolves around HTTP. So when you enter a URL into your address bar, it sends a HTTP request to the server, and then it gets the data from the server and displays it to you. So that's what we're doing. This is our server, 127.0.1:5000. And this is what I'm running locally. So if you go to app.py and let's say run this file, you'll get your server over here running on HTTP 127.5000. So this is the local server that this is running on, and that's what I'm putting it over here. And so XML HTTP request dot open. Open is the function to start a new request, and the request is a get request, obviously, because we want to get a summary. And this is the URL of the request. This is this is accessing the server. This is telling the server what we want to do. We want to get the summary, and this is passing in the argument. If you remember over here, we've passed in an argument. So request.args.get, that's what this is. This is a URL argument. So we've got a URL over here. We're attaching it over here. So URL equal to whatever the YouTube video URL is. And yeah, that's what this is. Next, xhr.onload. So once this once we send this request and once it loads, what we want to do is we get a response text, right? So the server sends back something called a response text. So the way we work on that is we just do, I'm saving the response text, xhr.response text. I'm saving that to a variable called text. Next, in a similar way which we access the button here, we're going to access the paragraph. The paragraph is this output. This is where the output of the summary is actually going to be displayed. So we do constant p equal to document.get element by id output. Again, same as what we did for the button. Then this text, which is the summary, which we get as a response, we do p.inner.html equal to text. So this basically sets the text of the paragraph to the summary. We set button.disable to false because now that everything is done, we want to enable the button again so that the user can do another summary. Button.inner.html equal to summarize. Again, we finished summarizing, so we reset the button to its original state. Once first we've opened the request, then we load the request, and once everything's loaded, we send the request. And send is basically nothing but this final confirmation that yes, we want to do this request. And once we do xhr.send, all our details, everything is going to be reflected onto the extension. And yeah, that's about it. Just a quick summary of everything I've done. I know it might be a lot to take in for some of you, but don't worry. You can the key thing is to divide this into parts, right? I didn't start out thinking that I'm going to code all of this together in 1 hour or something. Bit by bit, I first coded the API, then I moved on to the HTML, then I did the JavaScript, then I did the manifest, etc., etc. You have to divide this into parts basically, and once you divide a problem into parts, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. So once again, this is the API that we've done in Python. This is the layout of our extension. This is the logic of our extension. This is in JavaScript. This is a Chrome feature that is required, manifest, a JSON file, and here is our icon. Well, now that this is done, how do you actually get this onto Chrome? Because I mean, you've coded this is on your computer, but if you go to Chrome right now and go to a YouTube video, nothing's going to happen. This isn't going to show up. That's because we have to actually install this extension onto Chrome. And the way we do that is very simple, not a big deal. First of all, let me start from scratch. You open a new tab in Chrome, Brave, whatever. You go to your, this hamburger menu, go to extensions, and here you'll see a list of your extensions, right? Now I already have this YouTube summariser loaded, so I'll remove it for now. Let me just remove it. And to load a custom extension, all you need to do is, first of all, enable developer mode over here. I hope you can see this, developer mode. What you have to do is enable this. This gives you a lot of multiple different options. What here we want to do is load an extension. So we click on load unpacked. This opens up your file explorer. So navigate to your now just navigate to your folder structure, which is what I'm doing right now. YouTube summariser. And remember this extension folder we created that has all our extension files? We select this folder. Remember, not the app.py, that's the API that is separate, that runs separately from the extension. We just want the extension folder. So I'm going to select this folder, and it's going to take some time. And yeah, it's loaded over here. You should see YouTube Summariser 1.0, the icon and extension to summarize YouTube videos using the transcript. And yeah, that's it. Make sure it's enabled. And now all you can do is go to YouTube, go to any YouTube video. Let's say I want to go to this video. Let's see what
The Zenfone 9.
Zenfone is. Click on extensions, YouTube Summariser. Click on summarize, and yeah, that's it. That's all you need to do to create your very own YouTube summarizer that will help you summarize long videos in very few lines. And yeah, thanks for watching. Keep exploring.